video, I will be giving you tips and strategies on how to attack the 40-minute math test. So you've probably already taken the test, and so you're using this as a review. And I'm going to show you how I would have attacked the questions. It is really important that you try to remember the strategies and try to reuse the strategies after you have watched the video to attack the questions that you missed. So let's get started. The very first question, it's taking this chart and it's transforming it into an actual equation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the numbers on the chart. I notice that that is an intercept, and so that means that my B value for my line has to be equal to 15 because that's where it starts. So I know that that doesn't have 15 in it, that one does, that one doesn't have 15 in it for B, and that one doesn't have 15 in it for B. So right away, I actually have a 50-50 shot of getting this right. Then I notice that as these all go up by 1, each one of these go up by 3. And so that's the slope. It's 3 over 1. So 3 over 1 would be H. This is a y-intercept, so that I know that my B value has to be equal to +7. So that's wrong, and that's wrong. Again, I have a 50-50 shot. And then the next thing that I need to do is find the line parallel, so the slope has to be equal to -2. So that means that that's G. Whenever I have a word equation, I am literally going to take the numbers that I see and I'm going to associate them with the letter. So R and 5 go together, and B and 6 go together. And so in my equation, I notice that these are dollar amounts and 280 is a dollar amount. So one of my equation has to be 5R plus 6B is equal to 280. And again, I do elimination to figure out if that's true. It's not true for that one. It's not true for that one. It's not true for that one. So again, I'm down to a 50-50 shot. Now it says that R plus B has to be equal to 50 boxes because each one of these represents a box. So that means that F has to be my answer. This is a composite function question, so I'm going to work from the inside out. So I stick 3 into here first. So that's 3. 3 times 3 is 9, minus 1 is 8. So this is equal to 8. And then I take that 8 and I plug it in here for each value of x. So that's 8 squared, which is 64. 64 is 128 plus 8, and so that is C. It says that line Q has a slope of 1, and line R has a slope of 2/3. And so if this is -4, then that has to be equal to 4. And I'm going to use y is equal to mx plus b to find out where that point is. And so when I do that, y is equal to 0, and my y is equal to 0, so I'm using the point. So I'm using that point. This is my x and this is my y. Y is equal to 0. M is equal to 2/3, and x is equal to -4, and I'm solving for b. So that means that this is equal to 8/3 is equal to b. So that means that this right here is 8/3. These two lines, this line right here is the midpoint of those two lines. So what you do is you take those two and you add them together, and then you divide it by 2. So when I'm looking at these, I know that that can't be the right answer, that can't be the right answer, and that can't be the right answer because that's not big enough. So I still am down to a 50-50 shot. I notice that that 3 is never going to go away. So even if I do this math, that 3 won't go away. So that means that my answer has to be some kind of third. So that's your answer. If you want to see the math would be 12 plus 8 over 6. 12 plus 8 is 20 over 6, and that's 10 over 3. That's actually how you do that math. Remember, we cross multiply up in our fractions. That becomes 12. 12 plus 8 is 20. And then this 1/2 gets multiplied to the bottom number. That's why it changes to 6. That's just our fraction math. For the next question, what I'm going to do is just write the two equations. So it says the sum of two numbers is 90. So x plus y is equal to 90. And then the smaller number is 50 less than the larger number. So I'm going to say x is equal to y minus 50. And so if that's the case, when I plug this in, I get 2y is equal to 140. And so y would be equal to 70. And so that's my answer, because it's asking me for the larger number. And the larger number is y. That's the way I wrote the equation. For this question, I have to know that that is my n value. And it's already saying that a to the 5 is equal to 39. And so I'm going to plug it in to here. And so I'm going to say a to the 6 is equal to 39, because that's a to the 5. If you look at this, if that's n, that n is 6. And so 6 minus 1 is 5. And what is the value for that? That's 39. That's why that number goes there. Plus 6 minus 1, because that's my n value. My n value is 6. Minus 1 is 5, and then squared. And so this would be 39 plus 25. And so my answer would be B. A family rents a picnic shelter for $200. The cost will be distributed equally amongst all of the people. At the current cost, it will decrease by $1 if 10 more people plan to attend. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my middle value and backward solve. So what if 40 people were to attend the picnic? That would be 200 divided by 40, and that's $5. That's the current cost. What happens when I add 10 more people to 40? Well, that would be 200 divided by 50. That's $4. The cost just went down by $1. So this would have to be my current cost. So this would have to be the current number of people that were actually going to the event. So the answer is H. A3 is equal to 13. A4 is equal to 18. So that means that my common difference between the two numbers is 5. How many terms do I need to get to in order to go from the 4th term to the 50th term? Well, I just subtract the two. 50 minus 4 means that there are 46 more terms. Now I can use this equation. A to the n is equal to A to the 1 plus n minus 1 times d. Well, my starting term is going to be the 4th term. So the value for the 4th term is 18. There are 46 terms between this term and the term that I'm trying to go to. So that means that this value would be 46. How many 5s do I have? Well, I have 46 5s because the common difference is 5. And that would get me to the 50th term. So when I do that math, my answer is 248. The greatest common factor of two whole numbers is 10. The least common multiple of the same two numbers is 120. So I'm going to take 120, and I'm going to factor it, and that factors into 10 and 12. And so this is the part that's different. So I need to take 12 and factor it into 3 and 4. Well, if you take 3 times 4, you get what? 30. If you take 4 times 10, you get what? 40. So that means that the answer would be E, because that's how the greatest common factor and the least common multiple are actually connected with one another. We've talked about that in other earlier videos. The average of 5 distinct values has the same as the median score of the 5 values. The sum of the 5 scores is 420. So that means that the average times 5 is equal to 420. So when I take this and find the average of it, it means that the average value would be equal to 420 divided by 5, which is equal to 84. And I'm trying to find the one that's not part of that. So this would be equal to my median value also. So I need to subtract that median value from the 420. So when you do 420 minus 84, you get 336, which is what your answer is. What is the median score of the 10 scores? So I need to find both the 5th and the 6th score and then take the average of them. So I'm going to start canceling these out, smallest to greatest. So that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, this is 4, so this would be 5, and that would be 6. And the average of those two is just the same number, so the answer is D. Chelsea travels an average of 32 miles per gallon. She pays that much per gallon. And we want to find out what the total cost of the gas would be. So the first thing we need to do is figure out how many miles she drove. So she drove from Bright City to Marville. From Bright City to Marville is 390 miles. So I'm going to take 390 and I'm going to divide it by 32 to figure out how many gallons of gas I burnt up. And so and then if I take that times the price per gallon, then that should tell me how much money I actually spent, and that's $27. This represents the number of miles that you drove. That represents the amount of money that you paid per mile. You multiply the two, you actually get the answer. Ling asked 11 people how many text messages each of them sent last week. Each of the 11 responses was one interval was given in the table which contains the median of the data. So I'm just trying to find the median of the data. The median of the data would be the middle number. So if there are 11 responses, that means that the 6th response would be the median value. So we're just going to keep on adding this up. So that means the median value would be somewhere inside of here. And so that's the answer. To the nearest whole number, what is the mean of the list? Okay, it has a median value of 25 and a mode of 15. So that means that either my X or Y value is 15. So we'll just make the the x value is 15. And so if my median value is 25, that means that this number plus that number divided by 2 is going to give me that number. So 25 is equal to y plus 30 over 2. Well, that would be 50 is equal to y plus 30, so y is equal to 20. And so this value is 20. And then in order to find the mean, I need to add all those values and then divide by 6. And when I do that, the answer is 26. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce this fraction to make the math easier. I can divide 7 out of both of those, so that's 5 over 6. And so that would be 60 is equal to 50 plus 5x. And that means that x is equal to 2. So that's that answer. I have to write that as a decimal, so that's 0.8. Of means to multiply, that's 60, is 1/5 of a number. So this would be equal to 4.8 times 5 is equal to x. And so that's got to be a little bit bigger than 20. So that's your answer. For this one, we're going to cross multiply first. So this is 15x minus 5y is equal to 2x plus 2y. Now I'm going to get the x's on one side and the y's on the other. So I get 13x is equal to 7y. And I'm trying to get y over x. So if I move this y underneath, that means that my top number has to be 7. And the bottom number has to be 13. So that's D. How many blue tickets are there in the box? So they give me 3 different fractions and they say that the remaining value is 30. So let's figure out what the remaining value would be. So 100% of it would be all 3 of these added together. So I'm going to add all the fractions together. 1/2 plus 1/4 is 3/4 plus 1/10. If I do my cross multiplication, that's 34 over 40. So the remaining value would be 6 over 40. 6 over 40, x is equal to 30 tickets. So that means that this is 120 divided by 6. Sorry, it's 1200 divided by 6. That's equal to 200. So there are a total of 200 tickets, and I need to know how many blue tickets are. So I'm going to take 1/4 of that. 1/4 of that would be 50. This is an expected value question, so I need to multiply the probability by the value of each one of the coins. I have a penny, a nickel, and a dime, and I'm trying to figure out what the expected value would be when it's heads up. So that is 50%. So this is 3 times 1/2 for a penny, plus 3 times 1/2 for a nickel, plus 3 times 1/2 for a dime, and that's equal to 9/2. I'm looking for x. I'm given the outside angle, so all I have to do is subtract those two from one another. That's 35. This is asking me for the tangent of n. So I'm going to label my angles according to that angle. This is the adjacent side, that's the opposite side, so that's 6 over 11. So the answer is A. This line here, and that line there are all 8. So if I look at the overall size of this shape, the area would be 8 times 10, which is 80. My triangle would be 1/2 the base times the height, so that's 4 times 10. So that's 40, and so that would be equal to 40. Because whenever you have a shaded question, you always subtract the larger region from the smaller. When you have a trig question, you're asking for the period. It's this number, that's your b, and your period is equal to 2 pi over b. So that's pi over 2. So that's E. Again, you don't have to do any math with this because they already give you the equation. You're just substituting in. You're doing it from this angle, so your C side would be opposite the angle, so that's C. And this would be A, and that would be B. And so when you substitute in to that equation, you get F. You have a floor plan, so I'm going to cut this up. If this whole thing is 11, and that's 6, that means that this is 6, and that's 5. That makes that 25. And that makes this 6 times 9, which is 54. And when you add them together, you get 79. When you have a weird question that looks like this, it's just substitution. So 1 number sign 2 would mean that I would stick in 1 there, and then I stick in 2 there, and I stick in 1 there, and I get 3. So this part ends up becoming 3. And now I got to do 3 number sign 3. So that's my A, and that's my new B, and I substitute into that equation. So I get 3 plus 3 cubed, which is 30. So that's C. Okay, so it says compare the 2 volumes of A and B, and they're both right circular cones, but the radius, that's your R, is twice as big, and the height is half as much. So I'm looking at R squared and H to find the overall difference. So if I square 2, and then I multiply by 1/2, that means that that is going to be twice as big, because it's 4 divided by 2. So D is my answer. Remember that your pattern for imaginary numbers, power 1 is just I squared is equal to -1, I cubed is equal to -I, and then I to the 4 is equal to 1, and so the pattern is just going to repeat itself. So which of the following statements must be true? If you have in there, that means you need to be on the 4th one, and that means that 4 divided by 4 means you have no remainder, because that's the 4th of the pattern. So F is the answer. How many phone numbers are possible? So this is a permutation one. So how many digits do I have? It says that the first 3 digits of the number must be 555. So I'm going to put 1, 2, 3. There's 7 digits for a number. So I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4. These are all ones. There's only one possibility for each one of those. The next ones can be any digit 0 through 9. So that means I have 10 choices for each one of these. That's 10 to the 4th power. Well, I'm just going to use the picture because the picture is drawn to scale. If I draw the picture, there's an asymptote at -1. So it can't be equal to -1, and then I have an open circle at 3. So that means the answer is J. We're talking about a circle, and they gave me the center of the circle and a line that it passes through, so I need to find the radius. In order to find the radius, I use the distance equation. The distance equation says that you take the x's and subtract them, and you add it to the y's subtracted. And so this would be 4 minus 1 squared plus 7 minus 3 squared. And that would be equal to the square root of 25, which is equal to 5. So that means that the distance would be 5. So the answer is F, because that represents the radius. So they're saying that y is equal to 7, so I'm going to substitute 7 in there. So 7 is equal to the ln of x minus 2 plus 3. I know that because I'm solving for x, I'm eventually going to have to get an e somewhere, right? So none of those can be right. So let's solve it. So I'm down to a 50-50 shot if I have to guess. 7 minus 3 is 4. In order to get rid of the ln, I have to take the e of both sides. So e to the 4 is equal to x minus 2, so that means that it has to be that one. So I'm supposed to figure out which of these graphs is correct. At 8 o'clock, all three machines are working, so that means that the slope should be the steepest at the beginning of the curve. So I know it can't be that because not all the machines stopped working. And the one with the steepest curve is there. And it's the same as the very last part of the curve because at the very end, all the machines are working too. So the answer is F. Okay, so which of the following graphs the coordinate plane has the same scale on both the x-axis? If one of the graphs is this, so they're saying that the y value is actually less than the x value, it's actually less than the c. So that means that I need to shade below the line. So I'm going to cross out all the ones that don't shade below the line. So I got to get rid of that one and that one. And it says that all of my slopes or A, B, and C are all positive. So if A, B, and C are all positive, then when I do my slope, I get negative A over B, which means I have to have a negative slope. So the slopes have to be negative. So that gets rid of that one. Now I'm down to a 50-50 shot. And then I know that my B value is just C over B. And so that means that that's going to be a positive value because both of those things are positive. So that means that that one goes away. So K has to be my answer. For this question, I'm going to use Pascal's triangle. So this is for x cubed. And so those are my starting coefficients. So I have x cubed, I have 3 times, or I have 3 times 3, which is 9, that's negative 3. So that would be negative 9. And then this would be 3 times 3i squared. And then this one would be 1 times 3i cubed. 3i cubed gives me negative 27i. So I know that it has to have that. My bad. That's negative 3. These are negative 3s. So that's negative 27i cubed, which means that has to be positive 27i. So that means that this one and that one get canceled out. It can't be the last one. And so now I'm down to a 50-50 shot. And when I look at this one, that's negative 9. So I need to have negative 9 there. So the answer is F. Okay, for this one, I'm going to look at my different solutions. So I have one root there. I have one that bounces off the axis, and it's an x squared because it bounces off. And then I have another one that's a multiple 0 here because it's nice and flat there. And so there's a multiple 0 at 6 and at 0. So here's a multiple, and it has to go through x plus 4 because it's always the opposite. So D is the only one that does all of those. I am trying to find the total length of all of the edges. So every one of the edges. So this triangle here would be the same on all the faces. This is a 60-degree angle. This is root 3. This is 1, so that has to be 2. So that means that all of these edges are 2. So you have 4 down there. You have 4 up there. So that would be 16 altogether. So that's K. For my circle, if this is 90 degrees, that means that the amount of degrees from there to there would be 270.